How do you address the topic of divorce and separation with your kids? As a solid person, as a father, you love your kids. You probably made sacrifices to be married in your relationship longer than you probably would have done normally for the sake of your kids. Now, my background, I've already mentioned it in the first video, but real quickly, I was married 20 years. My wife, when I met her, her son was a year old. 5 years later, I married her. He was 6 when we got married, so I married a woman that had a child from a previous relationship. Then, of course, we had a child. I had a daughter a year later, and then I was married 20 years from that point. There was a vision I had for how I wanted my household to run, the type of father I wanted to be. I wanted to break the pattern of family dysfunction. Unfortunately, after 20 years, my marriage came to an end. So the question is, how do you manage that relationship? Now, in my thinking at that time, I thought that when my kids were older, it would be easier for them to handle their parents going through the process of divorce. Not true. So that's my experience I want to share with you. Here are 4 things I want to share with you that's important. One thing that I realized and that I learned is that your children still want you to be the person that they've always known. My first video talked about the importance as a man of holding on to your great qualities. That is what your kids have come to see. That's what they expect from you. Thus, how you adjust to the process of divorce will always affect your kids, but it's going to affect them not as much when they see you're doing well. There's an expression, I can't hear what you're saying because what you do talks so loud. There's also an expression that the best revenge you can have is success. And the best example you can set for your children if you go through the process of separation, going through the process of divorce, is being successful. You're going to hurt. You're going to feel crushed. You may feel betrayed. It's important never to show that you're weak in front of your children. Actually, never to show that you're weak in front of anyone except for another male who is maybe your accountability partner, that you can expose your weaknesses because he knows the caliber person you are, which is what I did. The same guy he's one of my closest friends, a multimillionaire, has a plumbing company he had for 30 years. Within the past, I say 10 years, he got a contract that totally shifted his whole business. And he was my accountability partner. This is 14 years ago now. So the points I want to share with you about your children are extremely important. What I didn't realize, let me share with you what I didn't realize, some of the mistakes that I made that I would change. My son was 25, so I felt, and I had been close to him since he was 7 years old. He has my last name. I adopted him. We didn't have step-family issues. The issues that I had was with his mom, unfortunately. I thought that my son was old enough, he'd be okay. He knew me, and so I began to withdraw from him so that he could know he has to stand on his own and not be as dependent on me because we were close. That was a mistake. I should have stayed as close to him as I was when he was 10, 15, because I was close to him his whole life. When I began to withdraw, he got a feeling about maybe my dad doesn't really love me as much as he did before. You would never think that, but that was the case because his biological father was never in his life. That's my son. My daughter came to live with me. And initially we did well. I needed to move from, I owned one of my investment properties in Hampton, Georgia. I moved from there. She went to school, paid for her schooling. I moved to Birmingham and started all over again in corporate America. And so we were living separate. And I was visiting every 2 weeks to see how she was doing. She's living in her own apartment at 18, 19 years old, working 2 jobs, going to school, doing what she's supposed to be doing. Now, my daughter's very attractive, and she could have gotten involved in a lot of things in Atlanta without me even knowing it. But because she was raised with integrity, solid, she didn't get involved in any of those. She kept moving forward. After I came back from Birmingham after 4 years, came back to Atlanta, me and my daughter got our own apartment together. I could see the effect of me not being around her for 4 years. By that time, she was probably 24. There are skills that she should have learned when she was coming up in home that she didn't learn. And of course, now she's fine. She's an outstanding woman. She's 32 years old now. But being who you are, being who your children know you to be is extremely important that consistency they need to have. So if you're going through separation, you're going through divorce, there's certain elements about who you are that cannot change. One of them I've already mentioned. The other one is quality time. The younger your kids are, the more quality time you need to spend with them. The older they are, the more direct you need to be with them about where you are, how you feel, how you're going to move forward to the next stage. Quality time. Many times when you deal with custody issues as men, because we don't want to battle, want to fight, we kind of lean back and then say, okay, well, I don't want to battle. I don't want our kids seeing us, me fighting their mother over custody. Your kids want you to fight for them. Fight, no matter what. And tell them exactly what's happening, why you're fighting for them. Because even though you feel you're shielding them, protecting them, you're not. Because they will get to be of an age where they can say, yeah, my mother may have said this about my dad or that about my dad, and critical and negative, but I know my dad and he fought for me. That's very important. Those are the first two issues. It's quality time. For that quality time, if you need to fight for it, you fight for it. Your mission, your purpose is to always put yourself in a position to take care of your family, specifically your kids. Keep yourself in that space to be able to take care of them. When you communicate with them, talk to them directly. Tell them that you love them. Tell them that you're going through a period of difficulty, but you're not going to change as far as they go. Tell them that if anything that they have a question about, to ask you about it. And tell them that you're going to do your absolute best to spend as much time with them as possible. And if that is hindered by distance, location, by the court system, which does not care about you as the male, you tell them that when you're a certain age, the lost time we have, we're going to make up for it. Your kids are priority. Don't give them up. Because how your children turn out, 80, 90% of it will be based on your influence as a solid guy. Now, this only applies to solid achievers, leaders, contributors, men that did their absolute best in their relationships to try to make their marriages work, were dealt with all types of negativity, contention, disrespect in their relationships, trying to hold it together for their kids. If you're not that kind of guy that I just described, nothing that I said applies to you. I'm just going to be straight with you. Don't waste your time. But if you are, what I just said to you is extremely important. I've been through it. There were regrets that I had. And the interesting thing is that, especially with my son, I was being gracious with his mom and taking too long to get a divorce. He's like, when y'all gonna get a divorce? But he didn't really see that from my perspective. I was trying to do things, even though we were not going to be together, divorced, I was trying to do things a gracious way. And of course, that was used against me, unfortunately. And the first video that I did, I talked about that. So I'm not going to talk about that here. Those are things I want to share with you. As the male, as the father, when you go through it, stay strong, stay solid, stay loving, stay the person that your kids know you to be, communicate very clearly, fight for your time with your kids. And if space, location, separating you, keep that relationship open, keep it strong so that when they're at an age where they can make their own decisions, if they're not 18, they will be open to rebuilding the relationship. But don't ever let your kids go. Don't do it. Because the person that's going to hurt more about what happens to your kids, usually it's going to be you. That's the thought I'm going to share with you. Apply it. It'll make a huge difference as you recover and become a solid person. I want to wish you all the blessings and success you deserve.